So, what do the Celestine Prophecy, Lil Dicky, and the Unfound Anamnesis have in common? That is not a joke. Stick to the end of this video, and you will find out. Also, stick to the end of this video, and you'll be able to find out a way that you can have a huge part in the creation of the origin of the Unfound Anamnesis. There's a couple of small, I wouldn't say plot holes, like information we'd like to give into the origin of the Unfound Anamnesis that we don't fully have fleshed out. So I'd love to hear from you. I'll give you some ideas. You can put your feedback in the comments. Speaking of feedback in the comments, make sure you like and subscribe to this. If you don't know by now, my name is Dillon. I'm one of the co-creators of the Unfound Anamnesis, along with my man, Matt Emery. You potentially already heard from him earlier this week, where he talked about the co-creation process. It's been super enjoyable, kind of telling you a little bit about us, a little bit about the history of Bastunia, of this cosmos. We've realized that we've given you all a lot. Our mindset is throw as much content out there and just see what sticks until these comics come out. So this is more a creative process for us to express ourselves rather than impress you. However, if you like it, like and subscribe and tell people about it. We're over 1,000 views now, which is super cool. We had 3 subscribers in one day last week. So these are the small wins that right now they could be laughable, but I think it's like, this is the fun time of like early creative process. With that said, we're going to dive back into today the origin of the cosmos of the Unfound Anamnesis. Matt has taught you, again, I always like to do it like this, Bastunia, the history of Bastunia, the 4 eras, so you know where we're at in the comic when it first starts, when we launch our first book at the end of this year. But right now, so you really know how did the whole universe come to be, we're going to be talking about the origin of the entire cosmos. So the bigger picture up here where the gods play. We're probably not going to keep these videos on our YouTube channel long term. So you really get a behind the scenes look with this. And where we left off, we talked about the origin. We talked about in the beginning, there was like nothing but darkness, right? And then out of the darkness comes 2 celestial primordial beings, mother and father, with this power to create and this ever expanding, ever growing essence that has the power to be used as the resources of all of life, right? So basically think of this essence as like mother and father can pull from it all the resources they need, all the minerals, all that they need to create life, create planets, create vegetation, animals, people, beings, all that stuff. But the essence also has this consciousness about it, where it wants to learn. It's able to communicate with mother and father, and they start creating life for it. Mother and father, is as powerful as they are, reach the end of their limits. And I'm going to tell you why in just a second. Mother's like, hey, we can't keep doing this. Mother decides to cast a spell, even though father didn't want it to happen. Mother casts this spell, and in doing so, she creates the found planets where this essence knows it's being put into these beings, earthly beings, planet beings, to learn lessons. And it also creates the lost part of the cosmos, where people have no idea why they're there. They have no idea why they were born. They're trying to figure out the meaning of life as it goes along. And it also creates these Ahzigra creatures, these dark entities that attack worlds, both mostly in the lost, but they're starting to attack worlds in the found, to rip people away from the order and back into chaos, back into darkness. Shit goes wild, right? And mother and father are shattered throughout the cosmos, and shards of their beings get basically implanted into beings in the found planets. These beings now have these godlike powers. Think of like demigods, right? And they are the original Arks. There's 12 of them as we start, and they all have this calling to go to Alpha, the original planet that mother and father created for Essence, and set up shop. So Alpha is now the Arks home base. They meet regularly. There's 3 powerful Arks, And then what would be the remaining 9 other arcs that definitely help, can definitely create. And they realize, hey, we're not as powerful as mother and father. We can communicate with this essence, but we need some support. They create Saginta and Ahzigra beings, the former being the warriors of this time, and then the latter, the Ahzigra beings, being the support characters, the healers, the engineers that kind of shape reality back when Ahzigra attacks happen. So they're there to protect and sustain life. Now, all of this to come back to, what does the Celestine Prophecy, Lil Dicky, and the Unfound Anamnesis have in common? Celestine Prophecy, incredible book, self-published, by the way. It's one of my biggest pass-along books. And Lil Dicky and the Unfound Anamnesis, what do they have in common? Well, I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about the Celestine Prophecy. This was written by a guy named James Redfield, and it's one of those fiction yet self-help books, similar to like The Alchemist or The Go-Giver, where although it's a fiction setup, James Redfield aims to teach real-life lessons, spiritual lessons. And the summary of this book, spoiler alert, I will tell you a little bit about the Celestine Prophecy, and I will also tell you about Lil Dicky's Hulu series, Dave. So if you don't want any spoilers, stop watching this now. All right, if you're still here, Celestine Prophecy, written by Redfield, teaching spiritual lessons to the reader through a fiction story. And it follows this unnamed explorer, we never really learn his name, who travels to Peru to find this ancient manuscript that is really there to signify the next stage in our spiritual journey as a species of human beings. And this manuscript contains what they call insights. And along his path, the main character meets people that teach him specific insights. So he kind of learns this manuscript as he's trying to find it. And the first 2 insights are pretty cool. Let me share my screen here. Spoiler alert. The first one is what we call noticing synchronicity. It's the entry point, the measure of whether we're connected spiritually. These meaningful coincidences are tiny miracles steering us towards the good life or our calling. They are always seeking first to awaken us and then to allow us to be guided by a spiritual connection to the unfolding of our intended destiny. Staying in a state of alert expectation concerning the major questions of our lives or the help we need increases the frequency of synchronistic answers. The secret is remembering, first thing in the morning, to watch these magical synchronistic moments. That was a lot, right? But the biggest way that Redfield kind of boils this down is by saying there's no such thing as coincidences. Things just don't randomly happen. You can find meaning in them to get you closer to what your life's purpose, your life's spiritual calling is. Very similar to Bastunia, right? Second one being the world has a spiritual design. It is designed by something greater than us. Now, whatever you want to call that. Some people call it Brahma, some people call it Bahamut, some people call it God, some people call it Vishnu, Shiva, all that stuff. Whatever you want to call it, there's a spiritual design. And the best way to describe this was I was watching Lil Dicky's show, Dave, recently. Dave is a Hulu series about Lil Dicky, and it's almost like it's like a mockumentary. It's a documentary about his life that he embellishes a little bit. And it's a love story. He has this love interest in the beginning named Allie, but Dave is on this rocket ship projection towards stardom, wanting to be this famous rapper. And in doing so, he loses the little things in life. Spoiler alert, loses his girlfriend, Allie, in the process. And then he achieves stardom to realize it might not be all it's cracked up to be. And he's slowly now, second season, trying to pull back to get what he lost, right? The love interest of Allie, and she's moved on. So Dave realizes, he's like, I got to get back into the dating field. Kind of feels lonely. And there's a really cool episode I watched where Doja Cat connects with Dave on a like a Tinder app, right? A matchmaking app. And Dave starts chatting her up, saying, "Hey, we should meet for dinner." And Doja Cat's actually giving him the time of day. Dave's like, "Oh my gosh, this high tiered celebrity is giving me the time of day." He's talking to other girls on this matchmaking app. One of them's named Sadie, but he's got Doja Cat talking to him. So he's trying to get this date together with Doja Cat. And throughout the episode, we're seeing how crazy Doja Cat's life is. She's got all these meetings, all these people messaging her and wanting to know about her. Dave doesn't have that, right? So Dave trying to get locked down a time to meet for dinner. Doja Cat doesn't see all this stuff. She's going from meeting to meeting to meeting. There are no such things as coincidences. At the end, Dave gets a little frustrated. He has a tough day as it is and says, "Hey, guess we can't really meet. There's kind of etiquette to this." And Doja Cat reads all this stuff after a busy day and she's like, "Are you kidding me?" She kind of laughs it off. What Dave does is he reaches out to Sadie, another girl he's talking to on this matchmaking app, and said, first he blew her off and he said, "You know what? I think I can make dinner. You want to meet at 7?" And we see Sadie message her date she was supposed to go out with that night and say, "Hey, something came up. I can't make it anymore." Then the episode ends with this guy waiting to have dinner with Sadie and realizing he just got stood up. And he's disheartened. And he pulls out his matchmaking app and he swipes to find his matches. And he finds one in Allie, Dave's initial love interest. And that's kind of the cliffhanger at the end of this episode. But I bring all this back to Celestine Prophecy. If there's no such thing as coincidences, Dave chasing, Doja Cat having a crazy life, Dave chasing that. If Doja Cat doesn't have a crazy day, they go out to have dinner together. She does. So Dave can't connect with her. So Dave's frustration, but wanting love, shifts his interest as just someone he was going to blow off, who Sadie sees Dave as this high power celebrity. She pushes off her date with a guy whose name I don't even know. He then matches with Allie, taking Dave further away, seeing what could happen, right? So it's almost like this spiritual design of them not being together is in play. That's a lot to happen, right? When you look at the world as there's no such thing as coincidences. That is the world that the arcs create. Small things like that, which are very intricate, happen every day, are having the strings pulled by these cosmic entities known as arcs. There's a lot that goes into that. Just describing it was tiring. So these arcs are tired. These arcs have a crazy job to do. And they do that. That's one life. They do that think of all of existence on Earth. Now think of multiple Earths, multiple galaxies. That's all governed by one arc. Now they have Sajinta beings and Insagia beings to back them up, but it's even reaching its end point. The Ahzigra are finding out, hey, if we attack the Insagia beings first, these support characters, take them out, then we can slowly chip away at these defenders. These arcs can't touch us. They have way too much going on. So the arcs have to think of a plan because they're losing the Great War between Lost and Found. So the arcs decide to search the cosmos for what we call hybrids. And this is where you come in. Hybrids, think of mother and father, the strongest entities. Then we have the arcs that have big shards of mother and father. Under the arcs, we will have the hybrids. Now, the hybrids can be made a couple of different ways. And this is where I really want to hear from you. Arcs could impregnate beings, very similar to how Zeus had so many demigod kids because he's a total horn dog. That could be one way to create hybrids. I've also really been attached to hybrids being beings that have small shards of mother and father in them, not as noticeable. They're powerful, but they don't really get where their power's from. That's where I'm close to. Or the other one being the Arks imbue themselves, or Arks killing other Arks and taking a piece of them to put into a being to create a hybrid, all throughout the cosmos. So what the Arks decide to do is recruit these hybrids, and they bring them to Alpha to train them in what they call the Academy, where the Arks will teach these hybrids the three disciplines. They'll teach them the discipline of the Ark, how to create. They'll also teach them the discipline of the Sajinta being, how to defend. And they'll teach them the art of the Ahzigra being, how to sustain. So these hybrids have a little bit of all of them. And these hybrids' job are to be the generals, lieutenants, generals, I imagine, spread throughout the cosmos, not being able to have a lot of galaxies, maybe one galaxy or even a few planets, but they can sustain in small pockets, and they are the footholds of the Great War. So they don't have as big of an expansive of an area, but they can do it all. They'll have some Ahzigra beings and Sajinta beings come along with them, but they're really the leaders of these armies. And most of these hybrids come from found planets, but one of them comes from a lost planet, and he isn't found for some time. And that hybrid is the god of the future world of Bastunia. And you're going to learn more about how he was found, the trouble he makes, and what he gets into when creating Bastunia, and where we're at in present day Bastunia in these next videos. But things we'd love to hear from you. Should we call the essence something specific? And how should hybrids be created? Should they be impregnated beings from Arks and regular humans? Should they be created from like destroyed Arks? Should they be having shards of mother and father in them that aren't as big as the Arks? We'd love to hear from you. Throw it in the comments below. Also, like and subscribe and tell people about this. I know this one was longer. I'll get better. I hope you're having a great day. I'm Dillon. Thanks for tuning into the Unfound Anamnesis. See you in the next video.